Magic Earth. Chapter 2. The morning frost still clung to the tavern roof when the Vance men left home. Jack tightened his cloak, the fabric rough against his neck. His father walked beside him, silent, carrying the royal summons folded in his hand as though it were a weapon. Behind them, the tavern door closed with a hollow thud, the sound of ordinary life shutting away. The path toward Eldoria's heart cut through fog and silence. Even the roosters were late to crow. Shutters cracked open as they passed, eyes watching from behind curtains, wary of the uniformed guards leading them. Everyone in the city knew what it meant when the king called someone to the castle. No one returned unchanged. Theodore tried to look composed, but Jack noticed how his father's fingers tightened around the parchment. The cold bit at their faces. Snow whispered underfoot. The sound of hooves echoed ahead. The guards keeping pace, their armor dull, practical, unadorned. Everything in the northern kingdom was like that. Made to endure, not to impress. At the city's center, the streets widened into an open square. A statue of Mage-King dominated the space. Not a grand hero on horseback, but a simple figure standing with one palm raised, as if feeling the wind. Jack stared at it. There was no crown, no jewels, no expression of triumph. Only calm control, the same that ruled Eldoria. They passed under stone arches darkened by centuries of smoke. Beyond them rose the royal fortress. It wasn't beautiful, not like the stories of southern palaces Jack had heard from travelers. Arrow's castle was iron and basalt, built into the mountainside like a natural extension of the rock itself. No gold, no marble, no stained glass. Just thick walls, heavy gates, and towers that seemed to lean into the wind. 2 guards at the gate crossed their halberds. The captain stepped forward, his blue cloak stiff with frost. "Name and purpose." "Theodore Vance and my son, Jack," Theodore said, voice steady. "Summoned by royal command." The captain checked the seal, then motioned them forward. His eyes lingered on Jack, curious, almost pitying. Inside, warmth did not follow. The corridors smelled of oil, iron, and old stone. Torches sputtered against drafts, painting trembling light on the walls. Jack's boots clicked softly, echoing like drops in a cavern. He tried to absorb everything, the distant clang of armor, the clipped voices of officers, the quiet authority that seemed to hum through the place. They were led through 3 gates, up 2 staircases, and into a hall where the ceiling disappeared into shadow. A long table stretched the length of the room, its surface covered with maps and scrolls weighed down by stones. Men and women in austere robes moved about with urgent purpose, exchanging brief words with messengers and scribes. No one laughed. No one even smiled. "Wait here," the guard instructed, then vanished through a side door. Jack and his father stood awkwardly near the wall. A brazier hissed beside them, but the heat barely reached. Through a high window, Jack could see the white peaks of the northern mountains cutting the sky. That was where the creature had gone. That was where this would lead. Footsteps approached, light, deliberate. A woman passed by, arms full of scrolls, eyes sharp as knives. She paused just long enough to glance at them before disappearing into the council chamber. Her expression carried no curiosity, only calculation. Jack shifted uneasily. He felt like a shadow that had wandered into daylight. Minutes dragged into an hour. Messengers came and went, bringing sealed letters bound with colored ribbons, red, green, and black. One messenger's boots were crusted with salt, another carried feathers still wet from flight. Jack realized they were coming from far beyond Eldoria's borders. Something bigger than a lost cow had stirred the world. At last, the doors opened. The guard returned. "His Majesty will see you now." Theodore glanced at Jack, as if to say, "Steady yourself." They followed the guard into the next chamber, the Hall of Winds. The hall was vast and bare, its walls unadorned. Instead of banners, narrow slits let the northern air stream through, whistling softly like flutes. At the far end stood a man of middle height and lean build, his back turned as he studied a window overlooking the snow-covered valley. His cloak was gray, edged in faint silver thread, the only hint of rank in the entire room. Mage-King Arrow. He didn't turn when they entered. "Approach," he said, his voice clear but quiet, like wind sliding over glass. Theodore bowed low. Jack followed clumsily. "I know your faces," Arrow said, still looking out the window. "The Vance family of Traveler's Rest. I've stayed at your tavern." "Yes, your majesty," Theodore said, surprised. "You brew a fine mead," Arrow added, almost absently. "That's why this summons pains me. I wish our meeting were of better reason." He turned then, eyes gray, almost colorless, as if the world had drained its pigment for him alone. "Tell me again," he said, "what you saw." Theodore began carefully. The scream in the night, the blood, the missing cow. Jack filled in what his father left out: the wings, the movement through the sky, the direction toward the mountains. Iroh listened without a flicker of expression. Behind him, 2 advisors made quiet notes on parchment. When Jack finished, silence settled like dust. Finally, Iroh spoke. Others heard it as well, all through Eldoria, even at the fortress walls. He turned toward the nearest scribe. "How many reports now?" 52 confirmed, Majesty," the man said. 2 from beyond the western valley." Iroh nodded, eyes narrowing. Then it wasn't local. Whatever it was crossed half the kingdom. He approached them slowly, hands clasped behind his back. "Did you feel anything unusual?" he asked. "Heat, tremors, sense?" Jack shook his head. "Only fear." That drew a faint smile from the king. A sensible answer. "Fear keeps us alive longer than pride." He looked to the door. "Send word to the council. And bring me any messenger that arrives. No delays. Then, to the Vances. You'll remain here until I've read what the other kingdoms have to say. What you've witnessed may be part of something larger than we yet understand." 2 guards stepped forward, guiding them to a side room. It wasn't a prison, but it wasn't freedom either. A stone antechamber with narrow benches and a small fire crackling in the grate. From beyond the walls came the constant rhythm of boots, voices, and the caw of ravens arriving on the wind. Jack sat by the fire, rubbing warmth into his hands. His father stared into the flames, his face unreadable. Neither spoke. Outside, somewhere in the castle's depths, orders were shouted, metal clanged, and the faint flutter of wings marked the arrival of more news. When the door opened again, hours later, the same guard appeared. "The king requests your presence once more." Jack's stomach tightened. He rose, following his father back into the main hall. Iroh was seated now at the head of the long table, surrounded by his advisors. On the surface before him lay 3 sealed letters, one with green wax, one red, one black. He looked up as they entered. "From Mutter and Nopsum," he said. "The other Mage-Kings demand to know if I've unleashed something I cannot control." His mouth twisted faintly, not quite a smile. Politics thrives on fear. He held up the letters, then set them down with care. They heard the sound too, as far as the southern cliffs and the eastern forests. Whatever flew above your farm passed through every sky we rule. Theodore exhaled slowly. "So it wasn't only us," he murmured. "No," Iroh said. "But you are the only ones who saw it." The king rose again. "I must know the truth of what happened, down to the last heartbeat." He gestured to the door. "Send for Lady Selith." Jack's pulse quickened. The name echoed among the advisors like a spark among dry leaves. One man muttered a prayer. Theodore frowned, uneasy. "Who is she?" he whispered. "An old ally," Iroh said, "and a reader of thoughts." The door opened, and a tall woman entered, robed in deep blue, her hair braided with thin cords of silver. Her gaze swept the room once before settling on Jack. He felt as if a draft had passed through his mind. Iroh nodded toward her. "These are the witnesses. I wish you to see whether they speak truth." Selith inclined her head. "With your leave, Majesty." She stepped closer, stopping before Jack. Her eyes were calm, patient. "You need not fear me," she said. "It's not pain I cause, only memory." Jack swallowed hard. He nodded. Selith lifted a small crystal sphere, no larger than a plum, and held it between them. The light caught and fractured. "Think of what you saw," she whispered. Jack obeyed. The scream. The sky. The creature. For a moment the air grew heavy, thick as honey. Then nothing. The sphere dimmed. Selith blinked, startled. Again she tried, whispering an incantation so soft it barely carried. Still nothing. She lowered the crystal, her expression unreadable. Iroh's voice sharpened. "Well?" "I can read his father," Selith said quietly. "But not the boy." "Not at all?" "Nothing, as if his mind were veiled." The room fell silent. Jack felt every gaze on him. "I swear I'm telling the truth," he said quickly. "I believe you," Iroh replied, though his eyes lingered on the boy with new intensity. "Perhaps your lack of magic shields you from hers. Or perhaps—" He didn't finish. Selith stepped back, thoughtful. "The memory is clean," she said. "No deceit, no confusion. Whatever he saw, it was real." Iroh nodded slowly. "Then we proceed. This will not stay a mystery for long." He looked to the north-facing window, where snow had begun to fall again. Beyond it lay mountains that no map dared name. "Tomorrow," he said, "you will guide my men north along the creature's line of flight. We'll trace its path into the wilds. If it hides in the unknown lands, we'll find it." Jack met his father's eyes. There was fear there, and something else. Resolve. Neither spoke as the king turned away, giving quiet orders to his aides. The mission had begun. The morning deepened into a brittle gray. The castle that had seemed eternal in silence now pulsed with movement. Boots echoed, voices murmured, and every corridor carried the scent of parchment and wax. Jack and his father stood near the Hall of Winds, waiting as servants hurried past with scrolls tied in ribbons of red and green. Theodore spoke first, his voice low. "Other kingdoms are stirring." Jack nodded, his mind still replaying Lady Selith's failed reading. If she couldn't touch his thoughts, what did that mean? He looked down at his hands, rough from work, trembling slightly. Nothing about him looked special, yet the king had stared at him like a puzzle. The doors opened again. A herald in blue and silver armor entered, followed by a messenger cloaked in dust. The man knelt before the king's advisors, holding out a sealed letter. "From the southern capital, Veraeus," he said breathlessly. "Urgent." Iroh appeared moments later, his presence quiet but commanding. He took the message himself, broke the seal, and scanned the lines. For a long time, no one spoke. Then he looked up, his tone unreadable. Nopsum heard it too. The sound reached the southern cliffs at dawn. He placed the letter on the table. "They ask if the north has lost control of its skies." His lips tightened in a faint, humorless smile. Typical of Nopsum, always assuming the worst of us. Another messenger entered, this one young, his uniform torn from travel. He bowed deeply and held out a smaller parchment. "From the eastern woods, Your Majesty. From Mage-King Mutar." Iroh took it, eyes narrowing as he read. When he finished, he folded the message carefully and set it beside the first. "The East reports the same. The cry crossed their borders before dawn, but they saw nothing. He turned to his advisors. So the creature flies beyond kingdom boundaries. A woman near the table murmured, "Then it belongs to none of us." Iroh's eyes flicked toward her. "Or to all of us," he said. "That is the danger." Theodore shifted uneasily. "Your Majesty," he began. "With respect, could it not be some kind of magical echo? A storm misheard?" Iroh shook his head. "No storm carries blood on its wings. Your field speaks for itself." He turned to Jack. "You saw the direction? North?" "Yes, my lord. Toward the mountains." "The unknown lands," one advisor muttered. "Even maps fear them." Iroh moved to the long window overlooking Eldoria. Snow drifted from a pale sky, settling on the castle walls like memory. 3 kingdoms heard a scream from something unseen, he said softly, and only 2 eyes saw its shadow. He turned back toward Jack and Theodore. "The world grows restless again." A scribe hurried forward, whispering something to one of the advisors. The man's expression darkened, and he approached the king. "Another messenger, Majesty, from the western outposts. They report movement in the skies again." Jack's breath caught. "Now?" The man nodded. "Just as the sun rose, a dark shape crossing eastward, too far to follow." Iroh's jaw clenched. "Summon the council at once." The order spread through the hall like wind through grass. Within minutes, the room filled with officers, scholars, and envoys. Among them, Lady Selith entered quietly, her eyes unreadable behind her calm expression. The king addressed the assembly. "We are united in uncertainty. No one knows what this creature is or from whence it came, but it travels freely above our borders. That alone changes everything." He gestured toward a massive map unrolled across the table. Lines divided the continent into 3 colored regions: blue for Aero, green for Mutar, red for Nopsum. Above them, the white blankness of the northern mountains stretched like a scar. "The unknown lands," he said, pointing. "No one who ventures beyond this ridge returns unchanged, if they return at all." A murmur rippled through the council. Some spoke of curses, others of legends older than kings. Lady Selith broke the silence. "If I may, Majesty," she said softly. "The magic that failed upon the boy, I have felt such resistance only once before." The advisors turned toward her. Iroh inclined his head. "Speak." "It was in the archives of my order long ago. The records spoke of a barrier, a kind of natural veil that shields certain minds from enchantment. It was said to belong to the first age of magic." "The first age?" an officer scoffed. "Myths." "Perhaps," she replied. "But so were flying beasts." Jack felt heat rising to his face. He didn't like being the center of their attention. He stepped back slightly, but Iroh's gaze caught him. "You carry no magic," the king said, almost to himself. "Yet magic bends away from you." He looked toward Selith. "Could the creature and the boy be linked?" "I cannot say," she answered carefully. "But the timing is peculiar." Iroh tapped the edge of the table. "Then we have 2 mysteries, one in the sky and one standing before us." He looked at Theodore. "Your family's loss may yet serve a greater cause." Theodore bowed stiffly. "If it must, Majesty." Moments later, another herald entered. This one older, his cloak streaked with mud. He carried a wooden tube sealed in blue wax. "Message from the Western Watchtower, Your Majesty. Sightings confirmed." The room fell silent as Iroh broke the seal. Inside was a brief note written in hurried hand. He read aloud. "A shadow of impossible size crossed the ridge. Wingspan unknown, no sound. Moving east. Flock of crows scattered before it. One fell dead midair." A chill passed through the room. Fell dead? Murmured Selith. The scribe nodded. The men swear it. Theodore crossed his arms. So it kills by presence alone? Or by purpose, Arrow replied. The king turned once more to his map. He traced a path from Eldoria to the western ridge, then to the northern peaks. It crosses the sky as if searching. Not hunting, not fleeing. Searching. He looked at Jack. Describe again what you saw. Not the shape, but how it moved. Jack hesitated, remembering. Slow. Not like a bird. As if it carried weight. But steady. Purposeful. Arrow nodded. That matches the reports. An advisor whispered, Could it be a weapon? Of whom? Another replied. No one commands the skies. Iroh raised a hand. Enough. Speculation will not give us answers. Only action will. He faced Theodore and Jack. You will lead a small party north. We will not wait for more signs. We will seek them. Theodore stiffened. Majesty, my son... Arrow cut him off with a raised hand. The boy goes. He saw the creature. His eyes may recognize what ours cannot. But he's only 16, Theodore said, anger breaking through his caution. Then he will learn quickly, Arrow replied, voice cold as iron. If the unknown lands wake again, youth will not spare us. Selith stepped forward. If you permit, Majesty, I will accompany them. My talents may yet prove useful. If the veil that blocks me persists, it may protect them too. Arrow studied her for a moment, then nodded. So be it. You, Lady Selith, will act as my sight beyond the mountains. He turned back to his captains. Prepare 6 riders, light packs, cold gear, and supplies for 7 days. They ride at first light. The officers saluted and left to carry out the command. Jack's heart pounded. It was happening so fast. Hours ago he had been a tavern boy, and now he was being sent to chase a monster into lands no one dared name. He wanted to protest, to ask why him, but Iroh's presence silenced every thought. The king's gaze seemed to pierce through him, weighing invisible truths. The world forgets what fear feels like, Arrow said quietly. Perhaps this creature came to remind us. He looked out toward the snowy valley. Find it, or find what it left behind. Either way, bring me truth. The meeting dissolved into quiet chaos. Servants fetching maps, guards shouting orders, scribes gathering notes. Selith lingered by the doorway, watching Jack. Her expression was unreadable, but her voice, when she spoke, carried warmth. You should eat something before you leave. Empty fear makes poor company on the road. Jack managed a small nod. Yes, my lady. As she turned away, Theodore placed a hand on his son's shoulder. You don't have to be brave, he said softly. Just stay alert. Watch, listen, that's all. Jack looked up at him. You'll come too, won't you? Theodore nodded. The king wants both of us. We go together. They stood for a moment in silence, 2 silhouettes framed against the gray light filtering through the tall windows. Beyond the stone walls, the wind carried faint echoes. Not screams this time, but something heavier, like wings brushing against the air itself. Neither of them spoke of it. They simply looked north. And somewhere beyond the mountains, unseen and patient, the creature circled again, waiting. Evening came slow and cold. The sun had already vanished behind the northern peaks, leaving the castle wrapped in dim silver light. Lanterns flared one by one along the hallways, their flames trembling in the draft that swept down from the tower stairs. Jack and Theodore stood once again in the Hall of Winds, a vast chamber that always seemed to breathe. The walls themselves whispered with every gust from the mountain outside. They had been summoned again by the king, but this time the air was heavier. Every sound, the scrape of boots, the hiss of torches, felt like part of a trial. At the far end of the hall, Lady Selith waited beside her crystal sphere. The faint hum that had once surrounded it was gone. "His Majesty wishes to see clearly," she said softly as they approached. "This is not punishment, but proof. Words can lie, even hearts can lie, but memory cannot." Theodore bowed. "We'll speak the truth as we did before." "I know," she said, her eyes flicking toward Jack. "But I must look deeper this time. Not into what you say, but what you remember." The doors opened again. Mage-King Iroh entered, his blue-gray cloak trailing behind him like gathering storm clouds. He didn't look like a man who ruled. He looked like a man who carried a burden too vast to set down. He didn't sit. He stood behind the great table. "Begin," he ordered quietly. Selith placed both hands over the crystal. Light spread from her fingers, cool, silvery, like moonlight on frost. The air thickened. Jack's heartbeat quickened. "Who heard the sound first?" she asked. "I did," Theodore replied. "What time?" "Close to the third bell past midnight." "What did you find when you reached the barn?" "Blood. The pen torn apart. Claw marks. Deep, like nothing human or natural." "And in the sky?" Theodore swallowed. "Wings, Majesty. Large enough to hide the stars." The crystal pulsed faintly. Selith's eyes flickered, her voice lower now. "And you, Jack Vance?" Jack hesitated. "I saw it too. But it wasn't just big. It moved wrong. Like it was too heavy to fly, yet it did. Silent. Slow. As if it didn't belong here." The glow brightened, then shuddered. Selith's hands trembled slightly as she focused. "What did you feel?" Jack's voice came small. Cold. Afraid. But curious too. Like it was calling. The light flickered once, and then died. The silence that followed was louder than any noise. Selith stepped back, her expression unreadable. Iroh's voice was calm but edged. "What did you see?" "Nothing false," she said slowly. "But the magic breaks before touching his mind." Iroh's jaw tightened. "The same resistance?" "Yes, like an invisible wall." "I cannot enter, not even to see light or shadow. It's forbidden ground." The king studied Jack with unsettling focus. "You resist magic without possessing it. A contradiction made flesh." Jack took a step back. "I don't resist anything, my lord. I don't even understand what's happening." Iroh's gaze didn't waver. "That may be precisely why it works." Before Selith could respond, a guard entered, panting, armor streaked with snow. "Your Majesty, a rider from the eastern border. He brings word from the Mage-King Mutar." Iroh gestured sharply. "Bring it." The soldier crossed the hall, handing over a sealed parchment. The king broke the seal and read quickly. As his eyes moved down the lines, the color in his face darkened. When he spoke, his voice carried the cold of the northern wind. "Mutar reports the creature's cry was heard in his forests. Again, just before sunset." Theodore frowned. "But that's impossible. The distance from here to the eastern border is over 300 leagues," Iroh finished. "Even a storm bird couldn't travel that far in a day." Selith looked troubled. "Unless there's more than one." Iroh shook his head. "No reports of twin sounds. Every account speaks of one voice, singular, but everywhere." He turned toward the map stretched across the table. Ink and parchment glowed faintly under the torchlight, showing the 3 kingdoms and the blank whiteness beyond. The south heard it first, then the east, now the north. He tapped the table sharply. 3 kingdoms, 3 horizons, in less than a day. Either it moves faster than wind, or distance itself bends around it. Theodore's voice was barely above a whisper. "How could that be?" "Magic doesn't work like that," Selith said. "Even the strongest teleportation spells collapse beyond sight. This creature defies every law we know. Arrow leaned over the table, his eyes hard. Then perhaps our laws are no longer true. The words rippled through the room. It wasn't just fear. It was realization. Something vast was awakening, something that mocked the limits they had built their world upon. Maybe it's not moving, Jack said suddenly. Everyone turned to him. He swallowed hard. What if it's not traveling from place to place but appearing, like it's in all those places at once? Selith's eyes widened slightly. A manifestation. Iroh regarded Jack silently, then nodded once. A voice that speaks across the world at the same time. Not distance, presence. He looked to Selith. Can your order confirm this? No, Majesty. Such magic hasn't existed since the First Age. If it ever did. The hall fell into a hush again. Iroh straightened. Then the First Age returns. For a moment, the only sound was the wind clawing at the windows. Then the heavy doors swung open once more. A courier stumbled in, cloak torn, face pale with frost. He dropped to one knee. Majesty, from the northern ridge. I saw it. Every eye turned toward him. He spoke in a trembling voice. At dusk, a shadow over the valley, wide as the keep itself. It moved without sound. Then, light, blinding white, and it was gone. He looked up at Iroh. The air turned to glass. Even the snow stopped falling. Selith's hands gripped the edge of the table. Majesty, she whispered. It's not bound by nature. It's bound by intent. Whose intent? Theodore asked. Perhaps its own, she said. Iroh turned to Jack again. What did you feel the moment it vanished that night? Jack hesitated. Like something ended, and something else began. Arrow's eyes sharpened. Then you felt what the world felt. He looked to Selith. What if the creature and the boy are connected by that event? I don't know, she admitted. But the magic that shields him may also call to it. They might be parts of the same disturbance. Iroh fell silent for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his voice carried the calm of command, the kind that leaves no room for question. Enough speculation. We act. He faced Theodore and Jack. You'll leave at dawn. Take 6 riders and Lady Selith. Ride north until the snow buries sound itself. The truth waits in the frost veins. Theodore stiffened. Majesty, those lands are cursed. No patrol ever returns. Arrow's gaze was unwavering. And yet something left them to reach our skies. If it can come out, we can go in. He stepped closer. Your son saw it first. His eyes may see it again. Jack's stomach turned cold. Why me? Arrow's expression softened. Just a little. Because it looked back at you. Selith drew a sharp breath. You believe it recognized him? I believe nothing, Arrow said. But belief will not stop what is coming. Action might. He turned to a captain at the door. Prepare provisions, cold gear, light horses, food for 7 days. They ride at first light. Theodore tried to protest, but Jack's hand caught his sleeve. Father, he whispered, if this thing is calling, maybe it's calling me. The words hung between them, fragile as glass. Iroh looked from one to the other, then spoke quietly. The world bends toward those who do not fit it. Remember that, boy. Selith approached Jack, her voice gentler. I'll stay close. If the veil around you breaks, I'll know. And if it holds, then perhaps it protects more than just your mind. The king dismissed them with a final nod. Go. Rest. Tomorrow begins what history will call madness, or salvation. That night, the castle lay restless. Snow whispered at the windows. The wind carried faint echoes, like wings brushing against stone. Jack couldn't sleep. Every time he closed his eyes, he saw light flickering behind the fog, the same pulse that had haunted him since the night of the scream. When he finally drifted off, he dreamed. He stood in a vast white plain under a colorless sky. Something immense moved beyond the mist, a shape without edges, a presence that filled the air like gravity. It turned toward him. The world stilled. "You are not bound by their chains," a voice said, not in sound, but in thought. "You walk between what is and what was." Jack reached out, but the mist swallowed everything. He woke with a start. The fire in the hearth had gone cold. His father slept, hand resting on the hilt of his knife even in dreams. Jack sat up, staring at the dying embers. Beyond the walls, he could hear faint thunder, or perhaps the slow beating of wings. He whispered to himself, the voice from his dream still echoing in his skull. "You are not bound." And somewhere, far beyond the northern mountains, something vast and ancient stirred again, not flying, not traveling, but appearing. Morning came gray and wordless. Frost clung to the castle's towers like breath turned to glass, and the courtyard rang with the clatter of hooves and armor. The world seemed to hold still, waiting for them to leave. Jack tightened the strap on his pack beside his father. He hadn't slept since the dream. The whisper still pressed inside his skull like a second heartbeat. "You are not bound by their chains." 6 soldiers from the Northern Guard prepared the horses. Their leader, Captain Reinar, was tall and scar-faced, his silence sharper than any command. He moved like someone who had survived too many campaigns to believe in luck. Lady Selith arrived last, her cloak a deep blue lined with fur. Her face was unreadable, but her eyes lingered on Jack for a moment longer than comfort allowed. Then she turned to Reinar. "The king's seal?" He held up a rolled parchment stamped in silver wax. "We're official." No one expected Mage-King to see them off. Orders were enough. "Mount up," Reinar said. They rode through the western gate as dawn broke pale behind them. Snow drifted across the road, whispering against the horses' legs. Behind them, Eldoria shrank to a smear of gray stone and smoke. Ahead, the northern mountains waited, vast, white, and without mercy. For the first few hours, no one spoke. The cold had a way of swallowing words. Jack rode near Selith, his thoughts spinning between fear and wonder. Each breath burned his lungs. Each gust carried the faint metallic scent of snow. By midday, the valleys opened wider. The trees grew skeletal, their branches heavy with rime. The air grew still, so still that even the horses' steps felt too loud. At last Theodore spoke. "Keep your guard up. The North has a way of punishing those who think it's empty." "You've been this far before?" Jack asked. "Once," Theodore said. "Long ago, before you were born. The cold was different then, kinder." Selith glanced back. "It's not colder now," she said. "It's older. The ice remembers everything that dies in it." Reinar muttered something about witches and pressed his horse forward. They camped that night beneath a ridge of black stone that jutted from the frozen earth like broken teeth. The fire they built struggled against the wind, sparks tearing loose and vanishing into darkness. Jack sat close to the flames, staring at the flicker of blue light reflected in Selith's eyes as she examined a shard of ice. "There's power in this ground," she murmured. "Old power." Her fingers traced faint veins running through the ice, glowing briefly, then fading. "Something stirs beneath us," Reinar grunted. "Let it stay buried." No one argued. Sleep came in fragments. The wind howled all night, dragging voices through the tents. At dawn, they woke to find the world white and endless. The ridge behind them had vanished under snow. By the second day, the land turned stranger. The road disappeared entirely, replaced by stretches of flat frost broken by cracks that steamed faintly, as though the earth exhaled through its wounds. Even the sun seemed dimmer here, more an idea of light than light itself. Jack felt the pressure of silence closing around them. It wasn't emptiness, it was expectation. When they reached the crest of a long hill, Reinar raised his hand. Hold. Below them stretched a plain of ice that shimmered with colors that shouldn't exist. Blue, green, even gold, shifting under the snow like something alive. The frost veins, Selith said quietly. Her voice carried reverence and dread. Where magic goes to sleep. They descended carefully, the horses snorting steam. By late afternoon, the wind died completely. Not a single flake moved. They made camp at the base of a frozen rise, setting a small fire shielded by stones. Reinar ordered half the men on watch, and the rest to rest in turns. Jack sat beside his father, staring at the emptiness. Do you think the creature came this way? Theodore's eyes stayed on the horizon. If it did, it didn't leave tracks. But I think we're walking in its shadow anyway. Selith stirred the fire with a branch. Whatever left that sound doesn't follow roads, she said. It follows purpose. Reinar looked at her. And ours? To find what shouldn't exist. The night passed without incident. But dawn brought something else. Jack was the first to see him. A figure stood far to the east, little more than a smudge against the snow. Motionless, human-shaped, alone. At first Jack thought it was a post, or a mirage born of frost-blurred eyes. Then it moved. Captain, Jack said quietly. There's someone out there. Reinar rose instantly. Where? Jack pointed. The man on the horizon was walking toward them, slow and deliberate, leaving no visible prints. Traveler? Theodore guessed. No traveler crosses this land, Selith said. Her voice had turned cold. Not without magic. Reinar motioned to his men. Form a line. The soldiers spread out, bows half drawn, the breath from their mouths rising in quick clouds. As the figure came closer, details sharpened. Dark hair streaked with gray, a long coat of tattered fur, eyes like polished iron. He carried no weapon. When he was close enough for his voice to carry, Reinar called out, Identify yourself. The man didn't answer. I said, Name and allegiance, Reinar shouted again. Still silence. The man kept walking. One of the soldiers stepped forward, sword drawn. Stop where you are. The stranger stopped, then tilted his head, almost curious. I will not warn you again, the soldier barked. A flicker passed through the air, so fast Jack thought it was a trick of light. Then the man raised his hand slightly. The soldier's sword tore from his grasp. Before anyone could blink, it spun through the air like a silver streak and impaled another guard clean through the chest. Chaos erupted. Weapons flew upward as if snatched by invisible ropes. Spears, knives, even shields ripped free from their owners and hurled themselves back at them. Men screamed. Blood hit the snow in dark arcs. Jack froze, watching in horror as Reinar tried to charge forward, only to be lifted from the ground, armor and all, and slammed into a frozen boulder with a sound that silenced the world. Then it stopped. 5 men lay dead. The stranger stood untouched amid the carnage, breath misting calmly in the air. The snow around him hadn't even melted. Theodore stepped forward slowly, hands raised. Enough, please. We came in peace. The man's eyes flicked to him. Peace, he said, voice deep and resonant, is a word for men who think they still own the sky. We were sent by the Mage-King Iroh, Theodore continued, steady despite the fear in his throat. We seek a creature that crossed the northern mountains, a great winged beast. The man studied him for a long moment. When he finally spoke, his tone carried both mockery and weariness. So the king sends more seekers into the white. How predictable. Selith stepped beside Theodore. Who are you? The stranger looked at her, and something in his gaze made even her flinch. Once, he said softly, I was someone who believed the same lie you serve. He turned to go. Wait, Theodore called. You can't leave after this. You killed royal soldiers. The man stopped, half turning his head. They were warned. You'll answer to the king. Reinar groaned from the ground, still alive but bleeding. The stranger's eyes darkened. The king will have his answer soon enough. Jack found his voice. You know what the creature is, don't you? The man regarded him for a heartbeat, long enough for Jack to feel his mind tremble, as if the stranger's gaze could reach inside. You've seen it, the man said quietly, and it's seen you. Theodore stepped between them. Tell us what you know. The stranger's expression hardened. Go home. Turn south. Forget what sleeps beyond this ice. We can't, Theodore said. We ride under royal order. The wind shifted then, low and sharp, carrying snow between them. The man's cloak stirred. Then carry this back to your king, he said. There is no need to hunt the beast. Why? Jack asked. Because the beast is already hunting him. The words struck like thunder in the quiet plain. The stranger began to walk away, leaving no prints behind. Selith called out, What are you? Mage? Ghost? He didn't turn. Neither, he said. I am what your world tried to forget. Then he vanished, simply gone, as if the air folded around the space he had occupied. For a long while no one moved. Only the sound of the wind filled the emptiness. Theodore finally knelt beside Reinar, checking his pulse. He's alive, he said, but barely. Selith stood over the bodies of the fallen soldiers, her expression grim. That was magic, she whispered. But not as we know it. The control, the reach, it defies every law. Jack stared at the snow where the stranger had stood. No blood, no prints, only stillness. What he said, Jack murmured. About the beast. Theodore looked up. Yes? He said it was coming for the king. Selith met his gaze. Then the king's summons was never about finding it, she said. It was about keeping it away. The wind rose suddenly, scattering ash and snow across the dead. In the distance, thunder rumbled, not from the sky, but from beneath the earth. Jack turned toward the north, the horizon hidden by walls of mist. Somewhere out there, something waited, ancient, watching, and now moving toward Eldoria. He tightened his grip on the reins. We can't go back. Theodore's face was pale. Jack. No, Jack said. If that thing is heading south, then the king's in danger. We need to reach him first. Selith nodded slowly. The boy's right. Reinar coughed weakly from the ground. Then ride, he rasped, before the storm follows. Jack mounted his horse, eyes fixed on the white horizon. He could almost feel the hum beneath the snow again, like a heartbeat calling from far away. They left the dead where they fell. The wind erased their tracks within minutes, and as they rode south through the endless white, Jack felt the words of the stranger echoing in his mind. Not as threat, but as prophecy. The beast will find the king,